Okay, we're back. I was on screen, now I'm in studio, and with me now are Roshen Matthews, Arek and Kelly Davis from TBWA World Health. And here we've heard a lot about the metaverse, we've heard about content production, we've heard about videos, we've heard about events. And here, I think fundamentally, we also have to take the approach of make sure we can build the omnichannel marketing system. And so this panel of distinguished guests will walk us through that story and an approach that makes sense for any of our life science partners. Roshen?
Thanks, Mark. And thank you all for attending this session. And we're super excited to talk about the omnichannel marketing system. Like within the industry, specifically healthcare marketing, omnichannel, a lot of companies have been putting in a lot of groundwork over the last couple of years, and certainly this year, I think it's kind of reached its fever pitch in terms of the drive for more creative efficiency and effectiveness in the marketing work that we're all putting out. So with that, in a lot of conversations with a lot of brands and different partners, there seems to be kind of a misalignment or on exactly what omnichannel is and what it takes to deploy an omnichannel system. So to that end, we wanted to kind of speak to that. And with me, I brought in a couple of talented associates. The first is Kelly Davis, our data and analytics lead, as well as Arek Zarycki, our technology lead at TBWA World Health. And my name is Roshen Mathew, and I'm the CXO. So just to dive right in, I think everyone's probably seen or read, a definition of omnichannel kind of described in this way. Certainly, like many definitions, it's not incorrect. It just doesn't necessarily offer a lot of insight as to what it takes to actually pull it off, obviously. And then a lot of times you'll see omnichannel kind of expressed in this from-to gradient. Multi-channel to multi-channel integrated to omnichannel. And you get a little bit more information typically. Certainly number of channels are all multiple. Where they start to separate is in the area of integration around experiential synchronization, right? You start to see website, paid media, and email working a little bit closer together. And you see, but then with omnichannel, it really gets into absolute synchronization across your entire system, and that includes both the non-personal, kind of digital channels, as well as the personal engagement channels, which are typically more offline or separated. And then in terms of the alignment of KPIs, you'll start to see some alignment of KPIs with multi-channel integrated, but with omnichannel, again, it's more absolute. You start to see a more unified KPI mapped to business associated to the performance of each channel. So say, for example, you might have email, and you might have a distinct team that manages email within a client-side organization, and they'll have their own kind of performance metrics that they're working towards and key performance indicators, etc. But where for an omnichannel system, where you have to arrive to a point where you're judging all channels against each other against a single KPI, that ultimately allows you to understand kind of the health and well-being of your omnichannel system, and what channels, frankly, to throttle up on or throttle down on. So, also what kind of gets lost in the sauce is, what omnichannel is at the end of the day. It often gets interpreted, we found, as kind of a different flavor of strategy. It's just more customer centric, and sometimes folks kind of use omnichannel for customer centric, and it just kind of gets swapped in for each other. But it's not just about having a vision and strategy. It's actually about a marketing system. It's the data, the technology, the infrastructure required to activate that vision and strategy. So perhaps another way to view omnichannel is that it's a new strategy that requires a systems upgrade. So let's unpack this a little bit. So there are three core elements that really kind of are characteristic or define an omnichannel system. You'll see hyper-targeting. I'm sure most marketers have been discussing the use of first-party data over the past 5 years in new and creative ways. Certainly in terms of hyper-targeting and finding your right audience, whether they're consumer and you're building lookalike models, or if you're HCP marketers and you're leveraging MPI data as well as your first-party data, ultimately it creates an opportunity for you to enrich your data, your first-party data, to really find your specific target within the overall internet or marketing landscape. And ultimately this is really critical in terms of driving that efficiency. So you're not wasting impressions or the dreaded spray and pray, right? Next is personalization. Pretty simple. It's the ability to read and recognize an individual, understand what they've seen or experienced within your marketing system, and then deliver the next best experience or message based off of your knowledge of where that individual is at within their journey. The next is attribution. So I talked about the unified KPI a little bit earlier, but really understanding how the channels are performing against the bottom line. Now, typically in an attribution model, you want that mapped to something like sales data. But I realized for most marketers, the sales data is either inaccessible or it's just lagging 6 months, sometimes even more than that. So in that situation, what a marketer should do is really kind of identify for every channel, what are the proxies towards bottom business impact. And once you arrive at those proxies and say, okay, this is the key performance indicator that indicates what value this channel is contributing to the bottom line, and then you use that to compare the values from one channel to another. And ultimately, that helps you understand which channels you should invest in or divest from. And then ultimately that's built on a foundation of data, and this is what comprises your omnichannel marketing system. Now, what happens if you take away one of these elements? Let's say you take away personalization. That's fine. You have hyper-targeting and attribution. However, it's more than likely now just a multi-channel marketing system. The same goes if you take away hyper-targeting or attribution. In this case, you have hyper-targeting. You're finding your audience really, really well, and you're delivering personalized experiences, but you're not really understanding the health and wellness of your omnichannel marketing system, and so that's certainly problematic. And also, we wanted to bring in some channel context. So you have these core elements built on top of a mix of channels. So in this case, this is the HCP mix of channels. Your own property CRM, paid media, earned media, peer-to-peer. But then, those are the non-personal. And then you have your personal engagement channels, which are the ever-important rep and HCP live engagement, and also the presence at conferences and congresses. So understanding not just from an attribution standpoint and the opportunity, what feeds into personalization, you need to take advantage within the digital channels. You need to take advantage of what's happening in those non-digital channels or those personal engagement channels. And that's where data integration comes into play. Ultimately, when a customer experiences your brand through any of these channels, that can change them from a state. Maybe they're no longer awareness. Maybe they're more in the consideration set, or maybe they're ready to convert. When you encounter an individual on one channel, being able to deliver that next best message or experience in another channel is really critical to drive that efficiency and effectiveness. And ultimately, that data is integrated and brought into a centralized decision engine, which is frankly a composite of a number of platforms, just kind of represented as a single thing on this slide. But to expand a little bit on that centralized decision engine, I'm going to invite Kelly to speak on these next few slides.
Thank you. Yeah, so next slide. So let's talk about this. The whole point is that we're trying to avoid buzzwords. We're really trying to get to the core of what these things are. So let's talk about what this decision engine looks like. Right, next slide. So for any engine to run, you're going to need your structure and you're going to need fuel. So If we want to achieve hyper-targeting, we want that audience-led approach. We're, of course, going to need really robust audience data. Now, that could look like first-party data from a client, or it could look like second, third-party data. And a lot of these sources out there are very robust, but then we face challenges with getting them to speak to each other. So then the second thing is going to be our personalization. So if we are wanting to talk, we're wanting those data sets to communicate with each other, we're wanting to get our creative message to an individual person on a one-to-one level, we're going to need individual IDs. And this is a way that we combine those robust data sets and that we also get that message to the correct person at the right time. Core part of Omnichannel. And then lastly, number 3, our attribution. Now for that to work, we're going to need a lot of structure in place. This is from the very, very beginning. You can't just at the end want to understand the performance of your campaign. You're going to need to put that structure in place at the very beginning. Like Roshen was talking about, understanding what your business objective is. If it's not going to be sales, which is usually what attribution is measured against, we need to identify what that proxy is going to be. And then you have structure in place where you're collecting data over time. A lot of attribution models cannot run on just a month's worth of data. You're going to need a lot of data that's collected over time to then look back and say, what areas led to achieving my business goals? All right, so next slide. So there are a lot of engines out there. A lot of times clients will have their own. We in particular, for our robust audience data, we use a whole suite of data sources, anything from Experian to Place IQ if we want location data. Since we are in the HCP space in health, we use things like Health Verity to connect our doctor information to really robust consumer data sets. And then to personalize, to achieve that one-to-one, what we use is LiveRamp. And all of this is housed within the system of our platform that Omnicom uses. Specifically ours at TBWA World Health is a platform called Omni. Again, there are many sources out there, but they all need to have their structure and they all need to be fed with really robust data. All right, so next slide. So at a very basic core, what a decision engine is going to be doing is connecting that target, your audience, to performance. That's the basic core of this. So if we start with client data, we're going to need to ingest that into our omnichannel system in some way. That could be ingesting the actual data itself and then lookalike modeling to find them within the system, or it could be that we actually build through proxies the audiences in that system. There are multiple ways we do it depending upon what the client has and depending upon what we have. That's going to allow us to not just have the audience that we can target against, but as a creative agency, it's very important that we understand the audience. What are we developing the creative for? What do we want it to speak to? So those audiences are very important because then we get to understand from a creative standpoint what they even like. Gives us that creative insight. Then once we have the audiences, they are connected to those LiveRamp IDs, that one-to-one, and that's what we actually target against. And since it's all housed within the system, we're able to keep track of how they are performing. Since we have built the audience, targeted against it, activated, we then are able to go all the way through to attribution and see the performance and optimization against that business goal that we had at the very beginning. Again, structure and fuel. All right, next slide. Now, a lot of that is data that we already have. That's that digital data, the robust data sets, client-owned data. But what about the data that maybe is in person? That's what Arek is going to take us through now.
Thanks, Kelly. All right, so let's look at an HCP data integration scenario here. And we're going to start with one of the most important engagement channels in healthcare, which is the HCP rep visit. So during that visit, there's a lot of data that's already being collected by platforms like Viva, from product detail to time spent on message, and even to reactions of HCP to different messages on screen, to the things that they're seeing on screen. But this can be easily augmented to add some segmentation information. If we jump to the next slide. So information like, have the HCP been previously introduced to this product, or are they currently prescribing a competitive product? So this information would then feed into the centralized decision engine that Kelly just talked about, in a way of simple database flags. So in our scenario here, We have awareness set to yes, we have ready set to no, and we have competitive set to yes. This data, again, like Kelly mentioned, enriched with that second-party data, third-party data, localization, and personalization, would then inform our other channels. So inform the channel selection and inform the next best experience for our HCP, right? So in our case scenario here that we're presenting, knowing that our HCP prescribes a competitive product, we can serve them up with a more targeted consideration or switcher messaging instead of just a generic awareness message. At the bottom, we have another important engagement channel between rep and HCP, which is a conference, another face-to-face engagement. And a conference, again, is a perfect opportunity to gather some information. So whether through an interactive in-booth digital engagement or even a simple information kiosk, we can collect similar segmentation data. Again, same process. That data then goes into the centralized decision engine and informs other channels, right? So on our case here, awareness set to yes, ready set to yes, but they're not prescribing a competitive product. We can then use our CRM to send them some conversion messaging or even invite them to request a rep visit or connect with the rep. Or we can see if there's if the HCP is active on social media and see if they're a prime target for maybe a DOL or advocacy recruitment. Let's jump into the next slide. Thank you. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening in the middle there, right? And Kelly already talked about the decision engine. And it's often, like Roshen mentioned and Kelly mentioned, it's not a single thing, right? It's a collection of tools, of processes that work together to gather and aggregate the data and then extract the necessary insights. And that combination of tools will depend on what you already have, what data is available to you. But the two platforms that I would like to highlight is Omni, obviously our own Omni, and then Viva, right? So Omni is a true end-to-end solution, combining audience development and channel planning and dynamic activation and optimization. And Viva, of course, is our CLM and CRM platform that we know, but has been moving into the omnichannel space with solutions like Nitro, which is their data warehouse and analytics platform, with solutions like Open Data, and Vault, which is their platform for workflow and asset lifecycle management. Let's jump to the next slide. On the conference side, that information is a little bit more segmented. So a lot of times the registration information for the conference attendees is with the association sponsoring the conference. But with use of technology like in-booth badge scanners, our reps in the booth that staff the booth can easily identify targets and really submit post-interaction, submit the same segmentation questions or the questions that we choose right on the scanner, right on the device. There's also companies like Adobe moving into the space. So AEM Screens, for example, allows for building in-booth large screen experiences that are powered by the same CRM that powers your email and web channels. All right, let's jump to the next slide. So for patient, similar scenario applies. We can collect our segmentation data through webinars or in-person seminars, where the patient can sign up for email, can self-identify, as a patient or a caregiver, or express the readiness to talk to the HCP. So looking at our example, we have our flags again: awareness set to yes, ready to no, competitive is yes, and awareness is no. That allows us to serve up conversion messaging on the web or point them to a doctor locator. If that data changed and we looked at values like we have at the bottom there, we could then decision engine then identifies them as a current person of our brand, and we can serve them up with CRM emails with financial questions, answering financial questions, or adherence messages, or even reminders and check-ins via our custom application. And lastly, on the next slide, there we go. In a payer situation, again, similar construct here. The data collected during the rep visit or collected during a conference, and again, enriched with that second party, third party data inside the centralized decision engine can then help us deliver that right message at the right time across all of our channels, web, paid media, and CRM.
Thanks, Arek. That was a lot on data integration, but what we don't want to not underscore is the importance of brand integration. A lot of times when you're standing up an omnichannel marketing system, you have a lot of different partners in play, and often they can be really focused on their specific channels and some of the places and spaces that they're trying to perform well in. And what can happen is there can be some liberties taken with the brand voice, the messaging, how messaging is specifically designed to align with creative expressions, artwork, and things of that nature. So it's also really important to ensure that you're really enforcing proper brand integration with an omnichannel marketing system. Otherwise, things can be confusing to customers, because at the end of the day, they're not necessarily perceiving channels and tactics. They're just seeing a brand and interpreting what the brand's communicating to them. So if they're seeing that across a myriad of channels, things can get a little bit confusing for them, or the experience overall is not working synergistically. Definitely for marketers who want to invest in an omnichannel system, don't take your eye off of the importance of proper brand integration. So let's talk a little bit about getting you there. So at TBWA World Health, we have an end-to-end approach to stand up an omnichannel system. It of course begins with the assessment phase, auditing and aligning, understanding your business goals, understanding your technical infrastructure, what's available, not just from a MarTech side, but also perhaps with your media agency, and how the ad tech stack is assembled and how they can possibly fit together. Understanding all of that, but then also to determine ultimately what it's going to take to stand up the omnichannel marketing system. And that's where the candid question is addressed: is omnichannel really right for us? And then once you've decided to move forward on the omnichannel process, next up is data enrichment. This is where we spoke a little bit earlier about taking your first party data and looking for opportunities to enrich that data with other data sets to make them more actionable. And then the next step, of course, is planning, where you actually design the holistic experience for your audiences across your omnichannel ecosystem, which then takes us to, of course, the creation of those assets and ultimately the deployment of those assets across a number of platforms. And last but certainly not least is impact. And in terms of measurement and understanding the health and well-being of your omnichannel system, even though it's listed at the end, the work that goes into understanding impact begins in the assessment phase. That's where we're really trying to understand what are the options, what's the access to sales data, what are the current reporting systems, so that we can start to inform the approach ultimately to understand, again, that health and well-being of your omnichannel system. So, that's a lot, but just jumping straight to omnichannel isn't necessarily right for everyone, and certainly it doesn't necessarily make sense if there's a lot of due diligence that needs to be done beforehand. So we have this maturity framework, with of course 5.0 being full omnichannel. Both personal and non-personal engagement channels are involved and integrated and measured against. But if we skip from 1.0 ad hoc silo to the two versions of multi-channel. You had planned and connected at 2.0, and then 3.0 is where you start to get that channel integration, and you're starting to trend towards a unified KPI. For a lot of brands, multi-channel integrated is a really a great place to be. It makes sense for them. Do they want to invest in the infrastructure and everything that's required from a process standpoint? Because in order to execute an omnichannel system well, the review system changes. There's major privacy and consent questions internally that need to be addressed to protect your consumers and customers. So there's a lot that goes into it, and that's why before you go from 3.0 to 4.0, which is really more kind of focusing on just the digital channels for to create to start leading towards an omnichannel system, you really do have to address that question: is omnichannel right for you during that assessment phase? And then let's say if you feel like your brand is present, let's say at 2.0, planned and connected. So then just kind of looking ahead, you would then develop a plan. This is super high level, of course, but you have to map a plan of, okay, well, what's going to take us from 2.0 to 3.0? Again, at a high level, maybe it means let's start mapping and connecting the ecosystem. Let's start identifying opportunities for synergies and synchronization. And certainly, let's start working towards that unified KPI so that we can compare channels to each other against business impact. So the next and the last section that we're going into is partnerships. Like the slide says, it takes a village. To help kind of provide a little bit of texture, we've defined some omnichannel services that you'll typically need when standing up an omnichannel marketing system. So it starts with program orchestration. This is where a firm will help you program manage end-to-end standing up the omnichannel system. This is a significant amount of work. It requires an individual or team of individuals to be able to manage all the work streams of not just their firm, but then other partner firms, but then also client IT organizations, medical, legal, privacy, all to ensure everything is being tracked and addressed throughout the overall process of standing up an omnichannel system. And then, of course, brand integration, which I touched on a little bit earlier. This firm is typically responsible for the brand itself. Often they're the ones who help co-author or build the brand with marketers. And this, and their focus, of course, in the omnichannel context is to ensure that that integrity of the brand and how it shows up, regardless of channel or place or space. The next two are media activation and creative activation. So, these are both kind of highlighted apart from the others because, as most folks on this line recognize and have seen, there's been such a major convergence of media and creative, fueled by the use of data and technology. So, those days of who's leading channel planning, it's one or the other, are really kind of in the rearview mirror, because the answer is both of them. And it really takes that collaboration, and these days creative agencies and media agencies have to work much more fluidly than the relay race that's occurred with a lot of brands over the years. So specifically for media activation, this firm will lead all ad tech strategy, audience data strategy for sophisticated targeting, as well as measurement and things and managing the flow of data from channels into your holistic understanding of what's working. And then, of course, creative activation, they dive deeply into your segmentation, build out personas, and try to figure out the right messaging, content, and creative experiences for your target audience. And then the next is technology enablement. This is where a client IT organization might need some help in understanding where their MarTech stack is at and how it can best interface with their media agency's ad tech stack and identify opportunities for upgrades or enhancements. And then the last is process design and change management. So For some companies, for many companies, this isn't necessarily a required service. But for some companies that are large and have large teams, especially if they're separate teams, an omnichannel system is going to require a new way of working, a new way of partnering, new processes. And for some cases, some people are going to have completely newly defined roles. So in those situations, often what will help is to have a partner come in to help capture current processes and identify the ideal new processes and how to manage that change within their organization as well as their partners. So I also wanted to kind of bring in those services which are up top and bump them up against a lot of partner types that advertisers deal with in terms of or consider with an omnichannel system. So first, it starts with the brand AOR, and perhaps they're just the brand AOR that just created the brand, created the essence, the product, and a lot of the value proposition, et cetera. And there might be a separate creative AOR. Also, there's, of course, media agencies of records. And then there's also tech specialty shops. So with the, all the advancements that's taken place from a data and tech perspective, there's a number of entities that have really built up dynamic platforms and delivery services that have really kind of branched out and added more strategic layers to their services. And then the last is, your typical kind of consultancy, your management consulting firm. So when we start with program orchestration, really, any one of these partners could really help with program orchestration. They just need to have seasoned professionals that are strong in the area of program management with relevant expertise. Where they start to separate is brand integration. As you can imagine, the firm that helps to build a brand can certainly manage and steward how the brand is showing up within an omnichannel marketing system. But certainly, creative AORs and media AORs as well. They're over the years that they've worked on businesses and brands, trying to do what's right for the brand and maintain that integrity is always something of a concern for them, but it's not necessarily their focus. The next is tech specialty and consultancies. It's typically not the area that they traditionally have played in. One caveat is, this is meant to be more directional. I haven't done an audit of the industry landscape and scored all the different companies. This is really just more to kind of provoke some thinking here in this area and just kind of arm you with an opportunity to kind of look at certain partners and consider them and perhaps new ways. In terms of media activation, certainly the media agency of record really stands apart from the field here. Creative activation, the brand AORs can do creative activation, and of course the creative AORs as well. Tech specialty as well. They do creative activation certainly, and like I mentioned, a lot of them are entered into the omnichannel landscape through delivery, dynamic personalization, and engines that provide that end user experience. So certainly they've been playing a significant role increasingly in the area of creative activation. For technology enablement, media AORs, such as say Hearts and Science within Omnicom Media Group, they've been adding to their practices. Last year they added a MarTech consulting practice to help clients because they identified challenges that a lot of clients were having in terms of getting their MarTech stacks in order to best fit with a more progressive ad technology stack that could allow the marketing organization to do bigger, bolder things. So we're starting to see media AORs consulting in the area of MarTech, tech specialty as well. Inevitably, their system needs to plug in to the MarTech stack as well as the ad tech stack. However, consultancies, you think of Accenture, McKinsey, et cetera, certainly they play in the area of technology enablement. And then last, process design and change management. That's kind of the bread and butter of the management consulting firm. Like our partners at Credera within Omnicom. They're fantastic at not just at technology enablement, but also process design and change management. So just to kind of wrap this up, there's 5 key takeaways that we wanted to leave with you. One, an omnichannel system is truly about an upgrade to your marketing system. It's not just a vision and strategy. The core elements of an omnichannel system, hyper-targeting, the ability to deliver personalization, and the ability to establish attribution at the channel level. And then 3, the importance of data and brand integration can't be underestimated. And certainly, as Kelly and Arek took you through, you have to have the right tools for the job when it comes to that decision engine and brand and data integration. And lastly, again, it takes a village. One of the key takeaways on that slide with the different tops, with the different partner types against those services, none of them had green marks across the board. And that's why ultimately, in order to stand up an omnichannel system, there's not going to be a situation, most likely, that you're able to find a one-stop shop that can do everything well. You're going to have to be strategic in terms of identifying which partners are best for you to stand up your omnichannel marketing system. So we'd like to thank Next Pharma as well as viihealth for this opportunity. If there's time, we'd be happy to take some questions. But thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. Some great sessions here on the second day, starting with David Karen from Roche, and through events and AI as the next landscape on the roadmap in pharma as well, culminating in how to build and roll out an omnichannel system. And it does indeed take a village. Thank you for staying with us. And if you came and participated in some of the sessions, there's always additional material that's available. In these 4 action-packed hours, we've managed to cover quite a bit of terrain from the metaverse through content, through data, and also through how to build through and carry this forward into 2022 and beyond. On behalf of Dario and Next Pharma Summit, I'd like to thank you for participating as well. If there are topics related to AI, personalization, and the overall customer experience, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We are planning the next events in 2022 that will take this even further. Thanks very much for your participation.